Hey friend, and welcome into this video where I'm gonna teach you what the heck you need if you're starting a balayage. If you got someone coming in, you wanna try it on a friend, I'm gonna show you all the tools that are pretty much essential in any balayage application, along with what tools you should not use in balayage applications too. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Now, if you notice, there's a lot of stuff on my table right now. You don't need all of that for balayage. If anything, balayage is actually one of those applications that you need barely any tools for, but I'm gonna show you the what you want and the what you don't want, along with the reasons why behind it all. So let's go ahead and just get started with the basics, which is going to be clips, combs, all of that fun stuff. So really for me, I use two types of combs in my applications. I use a regular cutting comb, just like this one, and a nice rat tail comb, just like this one. Rat tail combs for sectioning, regular cutting comb for combing anything out, just because it's a lot easier than combing things out with a rat tail comb. These teeth, because they are so fine, they're going to cause the most pulling, basically. And that's the last thing that we want. We want to be able to use our wide teeth in a regular cutting comb like this one that has, what is that? I don't even know what that is on this, there's like stuff on mine. Use a clean cutting comb. But this one is one that I would use, I think there's like conditioner on it from when I combed out, and apparently I didn't wash it off really well, whatever. So you're gonna want a wide tooth part of your cutting comb. You can also use just a regular wide tooth comb. Whatever you've got on hand is going to be the best for that. So those are going to be the two combs that you want. And then clips, I recommend having a plethora of alligator clips, just like this one. So alligator clips typically are going to grab onto the hair a lot more secure than any other type of clip. You can use those flat duckbill clips, but the alligator is definitely the best one for grabbing the hair and keeping it up out of your way, especially if the person that you're going to balayage on has really, really thick hair. Now, if you've never balayaged before, there's two things that you wanna make sure that you have. The first thing is a pair of gloves. So these are just the Framar pink gloves. You can use any kind of glove as long as it is like a latex or something equivalent if you are sensitive to latex. I don't like the powder gloves. Anything that's got powder in them makes your hands really dry. So I would definitely suggest using a powder-free glove. And the next thing that you're gonna want on top of that is going to be some kind of a balayage paddle. So a balayage paddle is where I like to place my lightener to keep my applications clean and neat. There are some stylists who just use the gloves, put their lightener on the back of their hand and work with it that way. But if you have never balayaged before, then it can be really easy to get messy in that type of a situation. So I definitely suggest using a short, emphasis on short, a short paddle like this Framar paddle. It is going to be the better option, and use gloves on top of that. So that way, if you are a little messier, which if you're starting out, if you have not been balayaging for a long time, then you're definitely going to want to wear gloves. Otherwise, you're going to get it all over your hands, and we want to be as neat as possible. Now I'm going to show you what you don't want to have as far as paddles go. This one right here, I can lift it up really quick. Oh my gosh, I can't lift it up. Okay, I got it. It was like stuck to the table. This one right here is a Product Club paddle. And this one is one I do not suggest because it doesn't have a handle for you to hold. So you're going to have to use your hand like this when you are painting on the hair, which hurts your wrist if your wrist is kind of like canted like this. So your wrist is like that, you're holding it at a weird angle, and it can hurt over the period of a decade, let's say. Your wrist can be really jacked up, and we don't want that. So we want to start with really good ergonomics if you can, and a paddle is definitely going to be better. Another thing too is that your hand will get tired from holding like this versus using a paddle like this, and you can just palm it with your thumb and your hand almost completely closing around it. So that's what you're going to want to do instead. Now there are other paddles that you can use like this one, and if you notice, it is quite a bit longer than this paddle that I originally showed you. So the reason why you do not want to use a paddle that is long like this is because it also puts a lot of torque on your wrists. It tweaks it, and it's heavier because there's a lot more length. So you want to carry the lightest tools so that way you have longevity in your joints and you don't jack your wrists up like most hairstylists do. We want to have career longevity, so using the lighter tools are definitely going to be best. So this is an awesome paddle, but I just wouldn't choose it for your balayage application for your first time. Definitely use the smaller one like this Framar one. There are a bunch of other options out there that are very similar to this. Just use one that is short and has a handle. Obviously, you want to have a bowl for your balayage lightener. Any bowl is going to work as long as it's ceramic or plastic. You don't want to use metal. Metal is going to cause a chemical reaction within your lightener that's going to make it process way faster. It's going to get hot. Basically, metal with lightener is not what you want. So use a ceramic or plastic bowl. And lightener, you're going to want to use a clay lightener like Wella Free Lights. This is a really great lightener to start out with. Always start with clay. Don't use a traditional. I whacked it. Don't use a traditional lightener. Traditional lighteners are going to be a lot more difficult to blend. So use a clay lightener. And lighteners are something that we can really use like an entire video to go into because there's so many different options. We're gonna save that for a little bit later. Just know that that is coming. But let's go ahead and talk about your brushes, which are a very hot topic, I feel like, for balayage, for really anything, because there's always companies coming out with the brush that's going to change your life. First of all, I'm going to tell you right now, the brush is not going to change your life. No tool out there is really going to change your life all too much. Really, you are your best tool. You are the one who's going to create it, and you can create it with a super duper crappy brush like this, or you can create it with a super awesome brush. And this may be an example of a super awesome brush to you. Everyone has their preferences. I'm just going to show you all the different kinds of brushes, ones I recommend and ones I just really don't think would be your best option for a balayage application. So the typical type of brushes you do want to use are going to be the paintbrush type. The paintbrush type, like this Framar brush, are really great for saturating and getting product on the hair. Brushes that aren't great for that are teeny tiny brushes like this, or brushes that have a really hard synthetic bristle like this one right here. So it does have a very flat surface, which typically is not the best for balayage. And another one too are going to be your brush combs. Painting with this would be very difficult in my opinion, because you'd have to use like a lot of your wrist. And even doing this, holding on either side, it's just not the best option. This would be great for like root shadows or color, but not necessarily for a balayage application. But brushes like these specific paint brushes, which there are a lot of options. Almost every single professional company makes them. And if you can't find one, you can pick up these chip brushes at Lowe's for like under $1. So this is definitely one that I recommend. It's really great for balayage applications. The only thing is that they're really only good for 2 applications because these brushes are natural instead of these synthetic instead of these synthetic bristles, which do not break down with lightener. These natural ones will break down with lightener, but they get you the most blended results. So this is definitely going to be a higher end of brush. It's also going to cost you more in the long run, even though these brushes may cost you $10, just depending on what you get. This one under $1, but you're going to have to use more of them and buy more of them over the period of, you know, however many applications you have, where these ones you buy them once, and if you ruin them, I don't know, jack them up somehow, then you may need to replace them in like 2 or so years. Overall, this is gonna cost you a little bit more, possibly get you a better application. Like I said, you're the tool, the brushes are not the tool. And then another option too is just a regular color brush. I like using the white bristle brushes because they do not work with, it's really easy to see the bleach, but at the same time, it just a little bit more aesthetically pleasing. You can use black bristles. For me, the color brushes are made with like a bunch of different types of bristles. So you've got black bristles, you've got white bristles. Black bristles for me are for color, white bristles are for lightener. It's just easier for me to keep it separate and keep it organized like that. So now that we went over the tools as far as the brushes go, let's talk about how to actually mix the lightener in your bowl. One thing to remember is when you are mixing your lightener, there are very specific mixing tools that you want to use for your lightener. Number one, you don't want to use a whisk. The reason why you don't want to use a whisk is when you're grabbing your bowl and you're mixing your lightener up like this, all that you're actually doing is you're pushing air into the lightener, and that will break it down a lot quicker. So you want to use something like a spatula, and you don't want to use a brush because we want to stay as neat as possible. Neat applications get neat results. So you want to use a spatula and fold your lightener instead. That's going to be the best way for you to actually use and mix up your lightener with a spatula. And then when you need to grab your lightener and place it on your paddle, all you need to do is reach in, grab it with your spatula, place it on your lightener, grab whatever brush you decide that you're going to use, and then paint on the hair. Keeps things much more organized. Your lightener is going to stay a lot more consistent and last a lot longer if you use a spatula versus pushing it around with a whisk. So those are the do's and don'ts with mixing specifically. Don't use a whisk, use a spatula, don't mix with your brush. Only use your brush to actually take the lightener from your paddle and paint it on the hair. So let's talk about incubating your balayage versus open air. So open air is when you paint it on the hair and you leave it without putting anything on it. No foils, no saran wrap or anything. If you are a very beginner in this stage of your balayage applications, even if you're advanced, I do not recommend that you actually open air balayage because it's not going to lift past really 1 to 2 levels. So if you want to get more levels of lift from your balayage and not have super duper warm results, then I suggest you incubate it with saran wrap specifically. And you want to use a cling saran wrap, not a non-cling. So a non-cling, I think Framar makes a non-cling saran wrap. I don't love it for balayage applications, but a cling saran wrap is really incredible because it's able to incubate your section and smush down on itself so air doesn't penetrate through. There's a lot of things that we could talk about specifically about why you don't want air to penetrate through. That can be a whole other video. Trust me, there's a lot that comes into all of this, and I talk about this and teach this all in Lumiere University, which is my education membership. So if you want more information about Lumiere University, I've got it down there. Just look in the description and I've got the links all available there. If you just want to kind of see what I'm all about and see a little bit more of my education, it's all in that area. The next thing that I want to talk about before we move on to a pro tip that I've got for you with your balayage application, especially since you're new, is how to drape your clients. Last bit of information that we need is talking about what to put on the person that you're actually going to be doing this balayage application on, right? So minimum, you want to have at least a towel. And then I would also suggest something like this, a balayage bib, which is literally like a backwards, if you ever go to like Joe's Crab Shack, how you have those bibs that you can literally put on to like catch the butter. This is catching the lightener and making sure that it just doesn't touch your client's clothes or whoever you are painting doesn't touch their clothes. So I like to do actually 3 different types of drapes on my clients specifically. I do a color safe robe, a towel, and then a balayage bib that goes around the back to catch anything that could possibly drop. So that is going to be how you are going to start your balayage application. Those are all the tools that you need. Nothing complicated. It doesn't need to be anything crazy. Remember, you're the tool. And now that I've finished and you know exactly what you need to use, I'm gonna go and give you a pro tip, especially if you're starting, that's going to change the game for you and help you. And it's so simple. You're gonna be like, oh, what? At the end, and you're going to love it. So here we go, a water bottle, right? Something that you're just like, how's this going to change the game, Kristen? What's this going to do for me? Well, if you're new at balayage and you've never done it before, you've done it a few times, then maybe you know that it's a little bit difficult to get that really good blend. So what you can actually do is get a nice little spray bottle like this one that mists. We don't want it to be like a super, like, I don't know, just like a really concentrated spray. We want a mist. So you can mist your section, brush it through. You don't want it to get dripping wet. You just want it to be a little bit damp. That's going to help with your blending when you go in to actually paint your balayage. It will help a ton. It will also help it process a little bit more because the balayage will stay more wet, so your lightener will stay wetter, and the longer that it is wet or moist, that that word. Ugh, moist. Anyone, did you get that creepy feeling just now? I know I did. So this will help with your blending. So that is my pro tip. And I hope that you enjoyed this little quickie class, this little quickie video in my channel. So if you would like to subscribe and learn more of the things and all of the fun stuff and just, you know, chill with me more, click subscribe. And like I said again, I've got some awesome links down there if you would like to learn more of my education, see more of what I'm about. I got all the information down below. Check out the description, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye, friend.